Hello, everybody, and welcome to Enrich TV, practical tools to enrich life. And today I would like to welcome a very special guest, Meg-John Barker. Actually, for those who don't know Meg-John, they are the author and they're academic, activist, and psychotherapist as well. A senior lecturer in psychology at the Open University, which is the university I also studied in, and Barker holds a PhD in psychology from the University of Nottingham. That's where I'm currently based. And is also accredited psychotherapist and specializing in sex therapy and relationship counseling. So welcome, Meg-John, to the show where we would like to explore the connection between relationship and enriching life, and how we can learn practical tips, strategies that we can do in our day-to-day life and apply this to have a little bit more enriched life. We have parents, we have singles, we have people from different backgrounds across the world, and we would like to welcome you. And just tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and how you can help us.
Sure thing. Okay, well, I think the thing that I'm most passionate about is writing self-help kind of materials. So I've got a few self-help books out there on relationships and sex. So I've got one on relationships called Rewriting the Rules, and then one on sex with Justin Hancock. Oh yeah, that's it. There we go.
I've got it, and I've been reading it. So you just spot on. I love it.
So I'm writing a second edition of that one just at the moment. So if anybody wants to, I'm doing a survey to get feedback on what people thought of the first edition.
Here we go.
And yeah, I've just published a book with Justin Hancock called Enjoy Sex, How, When, and If You Want to. So that's about sex and relationships. And also last year I did one on long-term relationships called The Secrets of Enduring Love. So that was based on a big study that my colleague Jackie Gabb did, which was all about asking people in long-term relationships what their secrets were. And the book gives you the answers. So
fantastic. So this is something we would like to learn more also today.
Right, I can tell you all the secrets today if you want them.
Yes.
Yeah. But I guess what's kind of, for me, I think I've been passionate about our relationships with ourselves and with each other and with the wider world my whole life. And I started off doing a psychology degree at Nottingham and a PhD as well. And then I found that really psychology didn't have all the answers I was looking for. So I went to sort of sociology, philosophy. I trained as a therapist. And I did a lot of work as well with activists and communities that were kind of outside the norm. So people who are doing non-monogamous relationships like polyamory and swinging, people who are doing sex in different ways, like people who are into kink and BDSM, and also asexual people and bisexual people, and also people who are doing gender in different ways, like non-binary gender and trans people. So I'm kind of drawing on academic sources and also therapy and also activism, and trying to bring them all together and say, what can we learn from all of these areas to inform our own relationships with ourselves and with the other people in our lives?
Wow, how fascinating. You just opened doors to so many different avenues to explore. Well, I'm keen to learn more about the secrets of enduring love, and from different aspects. Obviously, there's so much to look into. Let's just start whatever, like let's say kind of a normal relationship, the way how we know in the society, and then look into different variations, and maybe you can show the differences and how we can look at it from different angles.
Yeah, well, I suppose that is kind of where I'm coming from with this whole thing, is that it's useful for us to think about those ideas of like a normal or an ideal relationship, because I guess where I'm really different from most self-help authors is I don't think that when you have problems with relationships or with emotions or whatever you're struggling with, I tend to think that that is more like it's more useful to locate those problems outside of us in the wider culture rather than inside of us, like there's something terribly wrong with me. So my take on kind of relationship conflict, for example, would be that a lot of the problem is about the messages that we get about what relationships should be like and how we're trying to match up to those messages, rather than there being some fundamental flaw in us or in our relationship. Does that make sense?
It does, it does,
Yeah.
and I also remember from your book. Actually, I read it
Mm.
over a year ago, and I was rereading it again. There's so much that we kind of primed and framed by the societal norms and what's good, what's bad, and the
Yeah.
films and media. So
Absolutely.
and nowadays, it's still the messages just increase in speed and intensity, and there's so much stress and what's good, what's not. Although it's all
Yeah.
freedom and kind of democracy, we choose what we want, but at the same
Yeah.
time, cultural aspects and how they affect it
Yeah.
makes a lot of difference, where we live, right?
Absolutely, and in fact, actually, the cultural messages, certainly in the UK and the US, are very much like, if there's a problem, there's something wrong with you, and you need to fix it. And generally, you need to fix it by buying this product. It's like it's all this kind of consumer culture, which has to say, look, you don't look pretty enough, you're not happy enough, you're not successful enough. You need to buy this product in order to be better. So we're kind of taught to internalize everything when actually a lot of the problem does reside in those wider cultural messages. So what I'd say about relationships is like back in the day, 50, 100 years ago, people did not look to a romantic relationship to fulfill all of their needs. Like they weren't, there were marriages, obviously, but often they were more about economics or bringing families together, child rearing, that, you weren't looking for the one who was going to complete you and make everything perfect and to live happily ever after and have fabulous sex your whole life, that's, and be your best friend and be your cheerleader and like all these other pressures that we put on this one person.
But we do, in a
Yeah,
way nowadays, because we're
we
so,
do.
disjointed. We are separated from our family, of our region, from
Right.
our roots. We live in cities surrounded by concrete
Yes.
blocks, and we want that partner to be our everything.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And there's too much pressure. I mean, just in one area, the therapist Esther Perel, who wrote the book Mating in Captivity, she says, well, you can't get warmth and heat in the same place. If you want this everyday partner who's going to do the domestic chores with you, maybe raise the kids, maybe look after you when you're ill, you're not going to be able to find that person sexy forever. That just isn't going to happen. You're not going to be able to get those two things met in the same place. So either you're going to have to sacrifice some of the warmth and have a bit more separate life, and then you might be able to retain some of that passion, or you're going to have to say, okay, we'll have that warmth, we'll have that togetherness, and we recognize it probably won't be, might stop being sexual altogether, or it might be a fairly infrequent thing and a kind of warm sex rather than a hot passion. But all
Mm.
these, sort of self-help books and TV shows that are trying to tell us that we could have fabulous sex forever with the same person, nah, it's not going to work.
So what you're saying, wow. So what you're saying is kind of controversial,
Yeah,
contrary to many relationship and family therapists. They would say, well, let's look into it and heal and bring more sex, bring more passion, bring more
mm,
love. What you're saying, we shouldn't put that stress on ourselves because it may not be
yeah,
possible. So how
yeah.
do we go about it from your standpoint? What would be your recommendations for people who want to have that cake and eat it,
Well, I think I would actually say, yeah, you probably can't. And in a way, you need to stop putting so much pressure on yourself and on your partner. And what we found in the Enduring Love study was indeed actually that the relationships that did really well over time were the ones that had some space in them and some separateness, where people at least had some interests that were separate. So I guess those were the ones actually where they were able to keep a bit of that spice going because they weren't kind of in each other's pockets all of the time. So I think it's about every different relationship. I mean, the other big thing I say that's really different to most people is that there's no answer. There's no one size fits all answer to this. It's up to each person and each relationship to find their way. So some people do it by having a more spacious and separate kind of relationship. Some people do it by being non-monogamous. Some people do it by having different outlets for their needs. It's all different things for different people, really.
Mm. It's
Mm.
interesting that you brought this idea of being more open or just look into that as releasing the pressure because
Mm.
although we are coming from, let's say, a generation similar to the future generation where we have more freedom, but
Mm.
our families are still more traditional families in a way, in
Yeah.
majority,
Mm.
where they're rules, like the family where I come from, it's very much set in stone. You marry someone, you stay with them for your life, even if
Yeah.
there's no much passion, you still stay with them because you've committed and you've decided, and this is kind of that's it, you know.
And maybe that, maybe that worked when people weren't expecting it to be a happily ever after where they got all of their needs met in one place. But now that we expect that from partners, again, like staying together for the long term becomes much more difficult because we've got all these new expectations and we're still trying to do this old thing. So I think we live in very difficult times with regards to relationships. We need to recognize that complexity and go really gently with ourselves rather than thinking, oh, what's wrong with me? I'm a terrible person, that I've broken up with these people, or that I can't, commit to a relationship, or whatever other struggles that we're having, or that we've got a lot of conflict in our relationships.
Right.
Actually, that's to be expected.
Yes.
We're trying to do a lot here.
Yes, and of course, what you're saying, I'm sure this is what's happening in the world, actually, but what we have in reality and what we want to show to people may be different, right? So there's a big thing about appearing in our Western cultures versus what's really behind the scenes, what
that's
behind...
what we also found in the Enduring Love study, was that people felt like pressure to portray this image of the perfect relationship, and then we're all comparing ourselves on social media to some couple's fabulous holiday or some image of this beautiful family, and we don't know that was like the one day last year that they actually had a good time, or actually right after that photo was taken they had a big row, because people aren't sharing those bits, they're only sharing the polished up bits. Like, we're all creating this media that then hurts each other, and it's just such a shame. So whereas we could be being a bit more open, a bit more vulnerable,
Wow. How do you reconcile this fact that, we know from the positive psychology where we focus, the energy goes. So if we share positive news or share, connect on the positivity, that kind of multiplies. And if we, from a positive psychology, if we kind of focus and share, negative, that also may multiply because of the social synchronity and, firing patterns that we have. Kind of, we want to connect on the same level.
Well, I'm going to disagree a bit with positive psychology as well here. Have you seen the film Inside Out, the Pixar movie?
Yes.
Right. I'm more there. The Pixar movie, Inside Out, is all about how if we try and just be joyful, and if we try and get rid of sadness, we actually end up very depressed. It actually isn't very good for us, and the message of the movie is we need sadness. Sometimes sadness is appropriate. And actually those memories, once sadness is allowed back in and the memories get kind of tinged with sadness and joy, they're actually more beautiful, So we need just our sadness, our joy, our anger, our disgust, our fear. We need all of those emotional states to function as a human being. And so I do think there's a risk with that kind of positive psychology type movement, that we only emphasize the positive, and actually we're really losing out there. And it's going to cause us more problems long term, and especially with the world situation as it is. Sometimes sadness and anger and fear are really appropriate responses, and when we're just beating ourselves up for feeling them, we're actually making things a lot worse.
Yes. So what you're saying is being vulnerable, being open, and being okay with all the emotions that we have inside us.
Yeah.
We're called the negative emotions, like the anger, the fear, the sadness.
Yeah, and maybe not even calling them negative. When a feeling of profound sadness in the face of something sad can be a really beautiful feeling sometimes. A feeling of melancholy. I think it's because we've got so used to labeling it bad and trying to get rid of it, that we're kind of stuck in this place. But all of those, just as joy, at the kind of manic level that we see in that movie sometimes, the joy that's just trying not to feel bad and trying to make everything okay is not actually a good. That's quite a negative feeling in a way. Yeah. So is appropriate sadness can be a really positive feeling.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
There's so many things that you said, and very important. How, like, this concept of trust, because we talked about the relationships that need space, that need a bit of disconnect, or let the partner go and do their own thing, and then we connect again. And of course, the concept of committed relationship, a long-term loving relationship, that brings this idea. Okay, well, how do I trust, and what is trust, and
Yeah.
redefining that.
It is redefining it, I think. I mean, I think somewhere I ended up with in the book Rewriting the Rules was maybe we could be, it's sort of what are we committing to really? Is commitment just an attempt to kind of bond, almost tie somebody to us so they can't get away, or is commitment committing to a relationship that's mutually beneficial and trying to
Mm.
make sure that it is, and also maybe being able to notice when it is no longer mutually beneficial. So easily, I mean, again, another thing that I write about a lot is this existential idea that so easily relationships become a tussle between you and the other person because you're trying to make them into something for you that you want them to be, and they're trying to make you into something for them. So, classic is kind of somebody trying to make the other person into the rescuer and the person who's going to make their life perfect, or somebody trying to make somebody else into kind of the sex goddess, or we try and objectify people like that, and that's really bad for relationships. So how do
Mm.
we commit to another person's freedom? Can we commit to kind of this radical freedom of like wanting the other person to be the best they can be and to
Yes.
be happy and contented,
Mm.
and like maybe the big step is to say I'd rather you were happy and contented even if it meant this relationship changing, or even if it meant this relationship ending,
Mm.
rather than committing to this relationship above all costs and it must stay the same for all time, and then being really upset and angry if it doesn't.
Right. So what you're
Mm-hmm.
talking about is this dialogue between, you know, a system where I come from with a system of beliefs, in a
Yeah.
way, like what I believe is good for the family, for the relationship,
Mm.
and moving away from this model towards a model of what do I, bring to make you feel free and happy, and
Yeah.
how to elevate this relationship instead of like horse trading, or it's me, me, me,
Mm.
me, me, to how can I satisfy your needs, and also how can I make you happy, at creating
and
this,
and myself,
and
sort of like,
myself.
so you're not, it's like this kind of I'm okay, you're okay, you're not valuing yourself more than the other person or
Mm,
people, but you're also not valuing yourself less than them, but we are valuing everybody and everybody's well-being, and holding the fact that it's really complicated, that sometimes situations will come which benefit, and it's the same for a family as well as a couple, I think. It's like checking like how, in this how does this situation affect everybody, and how can we hold everybody's feelings and everybody's needs equally here, instead of scapegoating this person or objectifying that person or telling this person they should feel differently.
I love the idea of bringing all the needs together in family and relationship, and looking
Mm.
at it kind of holistically. But what
Mm-hmm.
happens, let's say, I'm just a bit provocative here. So, if, for example, in every relationship there is a struggle, right? So we know
Yes.
it. And first, like falling in love, dopamine, rush, everything is
Uh-huh.
beautiful, and suddenly, I see you're different, and who are
Mm.
you? And there's a bit
Mm.
of work to do, and I don't like that
Yeah.
because it reflects parts of me that I don't like about myself.
Right.
and
Yep.
that and that for those people who are aware of that, that's a journey. For those who are not, this is a cross point, crossing point, that they
Yeah.
choose either to stay together, or they don't, and the majority
Mm-hmm.
of people, they don't. So the
Yeah,
question is,
it's hard.
how it's hard, how do we make decisions based on kind of philosophy and where you coming
Mm.
from. At what point do we split, or do we go apart? Because it's
Yeah.
tough. And if we're saying, hey, I'm not comfortable in this relationship because it's painful, and the other
Mm.
person says, oh, it's painful for me as well.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
if there's a lot of doors, they'll say, okay, bye bye, I'll meet
Mm.
another person, I just need more
That's
space.
right, and that's the temptation these days. Again, is I think to treat relationship as if they're disposable, like that, and move on to the next thing. Because again, we're looking for this perfection, and we're not getting it in this person. So let's go and find it somewhere else. So I think the first thing we need to do is let go of the idea that anyone's going to be perfect. Like whoever we have relationships with, they're going to have, yeah, like you say very nicely, there's going to be some bits about them marvelous for us, some bits that are terrible, some bits that are just remind us of our own worst sides, some bits that repeat old patterns of our relationships, with our folks or whatever. It's all going to be in there. I really like John Wellwood. He's a Buddhist author who had this book called Perfect Love, Imperfect Relationships. And him and also Harriet Lerner, the systemic writer, they both kind of argue that, you know, relationships are the crucible where we can learn the most about ourselves, and maybe like we need to approach them that way. So instead of being like, oh no, it's got hard, that's terrible, I should get out of it, that would be like, actually no, I need to go into it. You know, this is now telling me something really helpful about myself. I can really learn from this, about how I relate to myself and how I relate to other people. And however it ends up, you know, however the relationship changes, or even if it does end, that's given me something really valuable instead of it being this awful sense of loss around it.
Wow, that's beautiful. So
It's
there's
not
no,
easy.
it's not easy.
I would say I struggle with that hugely myself. So it's not. I'm not saying like, oh yeah, I got that down now. Yeah, I just, you know, it gets really hard, and I like just go into it, and it's brilliant, and it's
Yeah.
just so easy. No, it's really, really hard, but it's worth it, I think.
Yeah, you know, we work on those that we teach, right? You know, this is a
Yeah.
topic that we are closer to because we also need some sort of looking into, and that's the best way to looking into by teaching it. So
Yeah.
I'm also living and breathing this relationship.
Yeah.
It's not easy.
Yeah, and I think we can help other people more when we recognize, oh God, this is really difficult. This is really challenging stuff. And that's not, as well, this is not to say that you should stay in a relationship however bad it is for you. You know, I think if a relationship is damaging, then it is a good idea to change it or end it. You know, it wouldn't be right to just stay in really abusive or toxic situations just because we want to learn from it. I guess it's about trusting oneself to know, actually, you know, is this still a useful relationship to be engaging with, or has it kind of passed that point? And if it has passed that point, how can we maybe go about that ending or changing it in the most kind way for both or all of the people concerned?
It's a very important topic that we're just touching upon, and many people would who would watch this, they would say, "Look, so tell me, at what point I'm making a decision, right? Either to stay or to go." So based on your practice and research or maybe personal experience, is there anything that you can, I know there's no solution that fits all, but if there was an advice or maybe like a question or some sort of lead magnet towards like, how do we make these decisions and what are we looking for?
Yeah. I mean, I think in terms of that, you know, is it time
Yeah.
to really change or end this relationship? My question would be, you know, is it, to what extent is it opening things up, possibilities up for the people in the relationship, and to what extent is it closing them down? And I think if it's got to that point where it just feels like it's closing things down for everybody, or for one of the people, and that's been happening for quite a while, then maybe that's a good point to change or end things. The other part of what you were saying, I feel like another thing really valuable is to think about which relationships we place all this importance on, because I think something really useful can happen if we start to challenge this view that the romantic relationship or the parent-child relationship, you know, both of those relationships sometimes get elevated as if like they're the most important relationships in life and nothing could ever touch them. They're the most vital. And actually, I think it'd be quite helpful to bring those down a level a bit, and bring other relationships up a level a bit, and think, well, you know, sibling relationships, friendship relationships, collegiate relationships, you know, people we work with closely, spiritual connections, you know, there are all these kind of relationships in life that are extremely important that we kind of devalue. And it's bad for both. You know, we can end up putting too much pressure on our kids or our parents or our partners, and we end up devaluing some of these other relationships that can be hugely nurturing and supportive and really help those other relationships when they get tough.
Yes, this
So
is
that's
so,
another bit.
yeah, it's a big bit actually. We
Mm,
undervalue many relationship, and as you say, we put so much pressure and
mm,
stress in our intimate relationship when we know that this is
yeah.
the kind of the path that we live every day, and
Yeah.
especially when we have kids.
And I think it's really interesting if you think about popular culture. So many movies and TV programs have this message, from Friends, Sex and the City, Girls, you know, romantic movies that have been, you know, popular in the last decade, where it's all about buddies, you know, buddy cop movies. There's so many movies that are saying really loud and clear, it's friendship that's really important, and yet we're still, even those shows, there's still this kind of tendency to think, oh, but it should be all about finding the right person and the romantic relationship, but it's the friendships that are so valuable. So yeah,
Oh.
I think we need to elevate friendship to be a bit more valuable, and maybe put romantic relationships in their place a little bit more.
So, the difference between friendship and romantic relationship, I guess, is just
Mm.
sex, or
Well,
what
this is a
else?
good question. It's a really good question when we start to ask it. It's like, yeah, what is the difference? Especially, again, the Enduring Love Study found that a lot of long-term relationships weren't sexual anymore, and people were perfectly fine with that. But like, yeah, how do you even? So, what is the difference? Is it cohabiting? Is it
Yeah.
sex? Again, a lot more people are living separately and not living with partners. So, yeah, I think it all starts to unravel a bit, and we think, well, who do we prioritize in our life, and what does make an intimate relationship or a romantic relationship different from any other kind? Is it sex? Is it living together? Is it joint finances? Is it having children? All of those things can be done with other people as well. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So, and especially if you broaden, the audience and look at different variations of relationships that are happening these days, and they
Yeah.
have been happening, but we're more like open into looking into some of the nuances, right? It just
Yeah.
put a question mark on, indeed, like the meaning, the definition of
Mm,
intimacy or romantic partnership or
mm,
friendship. And it can be true that we are so close or closer to people who are friends to us than to our romantic partner, who we
mm.
claim them to be a romantic partner, but actually they could be, a parent to our children.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. So I feel like, it's important to just think about how we relate to people across all different kinds of relationships. And yeah, I feel like people are kind of moving towards that on all of those levels. People are questioning, so monogamy is the one I've looked at a lot. And, actually it turns out, about 50% of people are having some kind of secret non-monogamy, where they
Yes.
are having some kind of affairs or infidelity. And then a lot of people having serial monogamy, so
Yeah.
being with one person after another. A lot of people are having much more casual hookups and friends with benefits type arrangement these days. A lot of people are monogamish, that Dan Savage calls it. They're kind of a little bit open, and then and I think it's 5% of people are having openly non-monogamous relationships of some kind, open relationships or polyamory. And it's the
Mm.
same if you look at anything. If you look at cohabiting, again, you get the same kind of massively diverse way of living with other people that people are doing now. The same with sex and what people are actually doing sexually. It's not, this one thing or the other anymore. It's actually this really diverse range of options that people are exploring to find out what's a good fit for them.
Wow, that broadens the horizon of just looking at it from a different perspective. It's
Mm,
like meditating. It's sort of like, oh, I didn't realize this is happening.
yeah,
And
yeah,
what you're bringing in is a really interesting angle to not to focus too much on that and just fix it or, heal
yeah,
it, kind of therapy it, but just
mm,
look at it from a broader perspective that it maybe that's it, like Helen Fisher's research onto animal kingdom as well. Like we're looking at
mm,
how animals mate, and many of them are not monogamous,
absolutely,
and actually
yeah,
there's a very small population that are monogamous in animal
hmm,
kingdom. So what we culturally, in Christian traditions,
yeah.
we're talking about, right? Because in Muslim tradition there is harems, and in
Oh
African
well, yeah. I
tribes.
mean, globally speaking, much more cultures are non-monogamous than are monogamous. So we're the weirdos, really, when it comes to the, like you say, animals and humans. We're actually in a massive minority if we're trying to be monogamous.
Wow. And then when you put that into that perspective, it makes all the
Mm,
sense. So,
mm,
two big things before we wrap up. So,
mm.
one would be like, what are the, tips? So we talked about no kind of objectifying as a tip is
Yeah,
quite a big one. Don't put labels on what is and what's not, and how it should be, how it should not. The second thing is like no perfect
yeah,
partner or no perfect relationship. Move away from those Hollywood type of happy end
yeah.
story, and it's all kind of up and down, and define your own type of relationship. And
Hmm.
just enjoy, and if you don't enjoy, look at if it brings more possibilities long term, and if it doesn't for a long period of time, then maybe if there is toxicity, if there is some abuse in the
Yeah.
relationship, maybe it's time to end, and look at
Hmm.
it from I'm okay and you're okay.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah,
Kind of
valuing each other equally. Yeah.
value and equal, and win-win in a way.
Hmm.
So thinking about how to bring more freedom, bring more passion, bring more space, and look at it
Yeah.
from creating intimacy, but also elevating other relationships and maybe friendship. Could be an answer to satisfy some needs that we want our partner, intimate partner, to satisfy, and
Yeah,
up
I think that
level.
can be really useful to just like even write down all of the needs that you would want to be met, and then think about who can meet them, which different relationships might meet them, so that you're not like trying to get them all met from a kid or from a partner or from a parent.
Wow. So what you're
Yeah.
saying is to make a list of needs and
Mhm.
assign different people for
Yeah,
those
I
needs.
mean that might be a little bit too kind of business
But
management
I
kind of
like
approach,
that.
but
It's
yeah, I mean I
quite a
have that kind
practical
of
one.
sense in my. I mean for me, like a big need is to connect with people over ideas, and I've increasingly got co-authors. I write my books now mostly with other people like Alexei and Taffy and Justin Hancock, and those relationships to me are some of my most intimate. Because it's really intimate to share your ideas with somebody and to write something together. People say a book is a bit like a baby, and it kind of is like that. You're creating this thing together. So in some ways, romantic partners who I don't do that with are never going to have that kind of intimacy with me. But that's
Yes.
okay, because I can have different intimacies with different relationships.
That's fascinating. Well,
Mm.
what else, would you bring as, let's say, practical tips and exercises, like you said, some of the things that people can just take away and apply to their life and
Mm.
feel better and enriched. And then we can talk about also some resources that you have
Yeah,
available.
sure. I mean, I would say I'm really into mindfulness, and I would say this idea of being present is extremely helpful. And again, it's really difficult often with the people that we're closest to and spend most time around. It's so easy to get into, yeah, trying to turn them into something else, or trying to say you've changed. You shouldn't have changed. You should be what you used to be. We're always with them, kind of almost in the past or the future. We're with them in that future way of what we wish they would become, or with them in the past way of what we wish they were still like. And can we be with them in the present and actually get to know this human being in front of us? In a way, it can make life a lot more exciting,
Yes.
because we're not with the same person we got together with. Inevitably, they would have changed, and so will we. So, in a way, we're always in a brand new relationship with somebody. In a way, every time we have sex as well with them, we're having sex with a new person. So it can
Right.
bring quite a lot of excitement to approach it in that way. But it's really challenging. So the kind of mindfulness practices of trying to be present to the present moment, they can really apply to our relationships as well, and to sex as well.
Wonderful. Beautiful. That
Mm.
I love that. Okay, and I
Mm.
also know that you do have some resources that our viewers can benefit from. So share a little
Yeah,
bit more about your books and some of the websites that they can learn from.
yeah, sure. So my main website is Rewriting the Rules. But you also can get to it from megjohnbarker.com. They both go to the same place. But if you Google me, that one should come up pretty quick.
Yeah.
And that one has all of my books on, so you can see more about those. It also has a lot of zines. So I'm really into making these zines, and they're like a little kind of scruffy little magazine, I suppose, is what they look like. Kind of there's a lot of cartoons in them. But I've done a few ones about relationships, and also about that idea of different emotions being valuable that we talked about. There's one about that there as well. So you can download those for free. Um, the other project I would mention is the one I've been doing with Justin Hancock, which is more about sex and relationships. And we're over on it's megjohnandjustin.com is the link, all one word, megjohnandjustin.com. And on there, we've actually been making cartoons. So we've got some animations that you can watch about being present and about consent. And we've also got a podcast, so you can listen to us on
Oh,
audio as well. We're doing that kind of every few weeks. We're doing a podcast. and again, we've got some zines that people can buy for a small price on there, which we're doing kind of guides to like almost like make your own relationship user manual and make your own sex manual
I love
and
it.
make your own guide to self-care. So they're like little workbooks that you can download, and they give you lots of ideas to think through, like how do I want to do relationships, how do I want to do sex, etc.
Beautiful, and such a valuable resource for all of us, because rarely do we pay attention to just prioritizing this part of our
Yeah,
life. And
yeah.
it's you make it or break it in a way, because when we deprioritize it, it goes under the carpet in most of the cases, and
Yeah.
people feel unhappy, but they don't know why. But once, like you suggest, you make your own manual and you become aware and you start being mindful and you live in the present moment, it's an
Yeah.
easy way towards a healthier future, or a more
Yeah.
efficient and effective way for you, in a way, like for
I mean, I
everyone.
think it has a ripple effect as well. If we can learn to be with the people around us in a kinder way, then, given the culture that we're currently living in, that's become very unkind and very like them and us, kind of
Mm,
refugees, a
mm,
bit, and Islamophobia and
mm,
racism and homophobia. If we can learn in our intimate relationships not to do that, to really value each other equally, then the ripple effect of that could change society, and that's what we
yes,
really desperately need right
yes, we
now,
need
because we're
it.
not being very kind to each other. I don't know if you noticed that,
Absolutely,
but it's not.
absolutely. Well, one of the missions that drives me to do the work is
Yeah.
to eradicate violence, emotional violence between,
Yes.
among people, and create more love-rich and blame-free
Mm.
individuals, families, and organizations.
I think
So,
that's a very good motivation, and I think these conflicts that we have in intimate relationships is very much the same pattern as what happens even up to the level of warfare. So again, if we can get a handle on how to defuse conflict and not hurt each other so badly in the family relationships and the couple relationships, then hopefully again that can echo up and mean that we deal with those big global conflicts better as well.
wow.
Um,
Well, thank you very much for being part of also this mission and sharing your pearls of wisdom. There have been
no
ton. I've
problem.
noted a lot of things, and I'm going to check on many resources. So hopefully, well, thank you very much, Meg-John. And it's been a privilege to just speak to you and have that chat. So thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you everyone for listening, and stay tuned and share the love, spread the good message with your family and friends, and I'll see you soon. Take care. Bye bye.